in this country that says it is okay for people to push for allegiance to a foreign country.
Congresswoman Omar caught on tape making vile anti-Semitic remarks, suggesting that Jewish Americans hold dual allegiance to the U.S. and Israel. Republicans pushing for Omar to be removed from the House Foreign Affairs Committee over the controversy. Democrats don't have the vote to even use censure. Anyway, joining us now is former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, for reaction. And by the way, the host of the new podcast, Newt's World. What does it mean about a Democratic Party that has a severe bigotry, racist, and anti-Semitic problem and can't get enough votes to condemn it?
Well, I think it tells you how strong the forces of the left are now. There's a deep anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli bias on the left. There are a lot of people on the left who'd be very happy if Israel disappeared tomorrow and who feel 100% on the side of Hamas, even while it's firing rockets at Israeli cities. So I think what we've seen is, over the last 30 years, a growth in the anti-Semitic behavior on college campuses and a growing willingness by some Democratic politicians to be very openly anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. And I think the second thing is that a lot of the younger militant members, whether they're anti-Israel or not, they are deeply opposed to Nancy Pelosi trying to exercise any discipline at all.
She's not the speaker anymore, clearly.
Pelosi is about...
Yeah, she's not.
Well, she's clearly losing... Look, she is losing control of the House. They may be forced in a desperation move to change the House rules to block Republicans from offering anything, which would, I think, lead to chaos. But she can't get her party to stay together. And if you're in a moderate district, if you're in a district that Trump carried, or if you're in a district that's heavily Jewish, and you're watching the Democrats go crazy, and you are a Democratic freshman running for re-election, this has to be a really decisive moment.
All right.
Who do you stay with?
Let me ask you this.
No.
So you come to power with the Republicans for the first time in 40 years. You and Bill Clinton decided you wanted to do great things for the country, and you ended up doing it. And I'm not a big fan of Bill Clinton, but you did balance the budget, which we haven't done since, and a lot of welfare reform, so many big things. He even said the era of big government is over, end of welfare as we know it. You guys found a way to govern, even though you had opposing views. You see now the Russia collusion narrative is collapsed. So now they just move on to the next thing, which is the widest net ever cast to basically look into any and all things Trump rather than govern. How does that end?
Well, I think it's going to end very badly. Yeah. But let me be clear. This is not an investigation. This is an act of hate. These are people they're basically saying, if you worked for Donald Trump as a private citizen, we're going to try to destroy you. We're going to make you hire lawyers. We're going to make you go through public humiliation. I mean, these are normal, everyday folks who are not in the political arena. They're going to get called in front of some of these committees, and the most radical, vicious, nasty liberal Democrats are going to feel that they have a right to beat them up, to humiliate them, to lecture them. And I think this tells you, I mean, we're moving. I was thinking about, James Tarantino wrote The Hateful Six. He could have written, The Hateful Eight for the Democratic Committee chairman and made a movie out of it. Well, we have never seen, at least not since the Civil War, the kind of deliberate, vicious character assassination, not just at not at the president. I mean, President Trump's a big guy. If they want to fight with him, he can fight back. They're going after everyday folks.
When Adam Schiff hires, when the author of the Steele dossier, Christopher Steele, doesn't support his own dossier, but Adam Schiff hires the only conspiracy theorist and person that does believe it, that tells you a lot. But, when David Axelrod says, this is beginning to look like a witch hunt. This is like, and Mayor Bloomberg says, this lurch to the left, not going to end well. When people like that are saying things like that, I think if I was a Democrat, I might listen, but I don't see any hope that they ever would.
Well, you don't know what's going to happen yet, because the truth is, as all these candidates line up to run for president, I don't think any of them want to get in a fight where the left is taking them on. So you see, over 100 Democrat House members have co-sponsored a bill that eliminates any private sector insurance. That's a 15% position. You're going to see a Democratic Party unacceptable to most Americans.
No cows, no planes, no cars, no combustion engines. Everything's free, and we're going to confiscate all your money. Great idea.
And no children. Remember?
Oh, yeah, you got to think twice about ever having any kids. And the world's ending in 12 years.
Tonight, Democrats are trying to minimize the self-inflicted damage from comments viewed as anti-Semitic by one of their high-profile freshman lawmakers. We're also at this hour awaiting the sentencing of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. First, the Democrats and anti-Semitism. What was once thought to be an easy fix, a public resolution, has turned into a political football. And Republicans, and even some Democrats, are saying the Democrat leadership in the House is fumbling that football. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel starts us off tonight from Capitol Hill with a vote that just wrapped up. Good evening, Mike.
Brett, good evening to you. The vote was 407-23 with Iowa's Steve King voting present. But this has been an epic struggle all week. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi forced to defend one of her controversial and high-profile freshman members.
It's up to her to explain, but I do not believe that she understood the full weight of the words.
A reference to Minnesota Democrat Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who suggested those who support Israel have dual loyalty, and that being opposed to Prime Minister Netanyahu and, quote, the occupation is not the same as being anti-Semitic. The anti-Semitic resolution noted that the House of Representatives condemns anti-Semitic acts and statements as hateful expressions of intolerance that are contradictory to the values that define the people of the United States. But after an internal battle among Democrats, the name of the resolution was changed to anti-hate and was broadened to include a wide range of bigotry victims: Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, the LGBTQ community, immigrants, and others with verbal attacks, incitement, and violence.
We're sadly living in a time in this country where we're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, a rise in Islamophobia, a rise in racism and bigotry.
Rallying to Omar's defense, some of her fellow high-profile freshmen. New York Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been tweeting her defense of Omar to nearly 3.5 million followers. There seems to be no problem at all with a zero-tolerance stance for simply asking about U.S. foreign policy. And Michigan Democrat Rashida Tlaib went even further.
I can tell you, when she speaks about those issues, what I hear is her trying to uplift my grandmother in Palestine, in the West Bank, and saying that there are real, actual, factual evidence to show that there's human rights violations.
Republicans sounded stunned by the civil war on the other side of the aisle.
There's a fracture, obviously, in the Democrat Party. There's a radical leftist fringe that's really intolerant, particularly towards our Jewish friends.
And now some Democrats are upset leadership caved.
And when one of our colleagues invokes the classic anti-Semitic tropes, the anti-Semitic language, that Jews control the world, that Jews care only about money, that Jews cannot be loyal Americans if they also support Israel, this, too, must be condemned.
Republicans say the shift to the left is shocking.
This is not your father's Democratic Party. If it was ever more obvious than today, I don't know when it was more obvious. They can't agree to condemn anti-Semitism.
Some sources suggest this signals possible trouble for Speaker Pelosi and her leadership team over the next 2 years, when you consider this non-binding resolution was really quite a struggle this week.
Well, the news comes as allegations of anti-Semitism grip Britain's leftist Labour Party, with New York Magazine asking tonight, can anti-Semitism split Democrats like it split Labour? So are Democrats here in danger of losing Jewish members of their own party over their handling of what Speaker Pelosi called early last month deeply offensive anti-Semitic comments by Congresswoman Omar? Well, today, Pelosi called the latest Omar comments not intentionally anti-Semitic. Let's bring in Zuhdi Jasser from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy and former Republican Senator from Minnesota, Norm Coleman, who's also the national chairman of the Republican Jewish Coalition. Welcome to you both, gentlemen.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll start with you, Senator. What do you make of Nancy Pelosi seeming to soften a bit on her characterization of these comments?
She's getting pressure from the left, and that's what this is all about. I actually applauded Speaker Pelosi and Steny Hoyer, the old Democrats, who originally, said, listen, this isn't right. Omar is an anti-Semite. Not everyone that criticizes Israel is anti-Semitic. Not everyone that criticizes someone who's Jewish is anti-Semitic. But if you have someone who repeatedly issues the traffics in the classic tripes, Jews control politicians with money, they control the media, and they have dual loyalties, that person is an anti-Semite. So that's what you have. Pelosi originally criticized it, and then I think had to step back because the far left is pushing back. And unfortunately, that is the base of the Democratic Party today.
Well, and we heard in the Washington Post headline, there were several reports on what happened behind closed doors today. House Democrats erupt in protests over indirect sanction of Representative Omar for alleged anti-Semitism, because they're still saying they're not going to include her name probably in this resolution. The article goes on to say House Democrats erupted in fury Wednesday, challenging leaders over indirectly sanctioning freshman Representative Ilhan Omar. Zuhdi, what do you make of that? I mean, that there would be that much heat that they cannot get together in a uniform voice on this particular issue.
That tells you that the Pelosi-Hoyer leadership is really they'll sacrifice anything at the altar of identity politics. And at the end of the day, we see happening in Congress where the UN went, which is the red-green axis. You have the coalition of the far-left socialists in the world, the dictators that are socialists, along with the Islamists, and sacrifice that is the Jewish community. And I have to tell you, as an American Muslim, it is offensive to me that she's not held to the same standard. If she was not Muslim, there would have been unanimous rebuke and it wouldn't have even been an issue. But she's being coddled and infantilized, and we're not being treated as equals. She's not being given tough love. In fact, they're denying that it's anti-Semitism. I would ask the Democrats to look up the State Department's report on what new anti-Semitism is. The definition of new anti-Semitism is the generalizations about Israel in a way in which to make the Jewish community appear in a bigoted way against them, and to generalize in conspiracy theories. All the things she's trafficking in are canards of tropes of bigotry against the Jewish community that is classic new anti-Semitism. And the Democrats are making fools out of themselves by not taking the bull by the horns and teaching her on-the-job training, which shouldn't have to be done, of what anti-Semitism is.
Yeah, and this is not the first time. As we've talked about, there are things in the past, but more than one occurrence since she joined Congress. Congressman Cedric Richmond said this. He said, I think there's a big rise in anti-Semitism and racism, and that's a bigger conversation we need to be having, but it starts at 1600 Pennsylvania. It doesn't start with one member out of 435 members of Congress. Senator, what do you make of them pointing the finger back at the president?
Well, I think they're trying to avoid dealing with the reality they have in front of them. And the reality they have in front of them is a member of Congress who is anti-Semitic, who serves on the Foreign Relations Committee. These are, by the way, this is not just new anti-Semitism. This is classic anti-Semitism. Talking about Jews controlling the media, big money controlling politicians. The new anti-Semitism is what she's also part of supporting, which is the BDS movement, which is a way to say Israel shouldn't exist, so we're going to drive Israel out by boycotting, et cetera, sanctions. And so that's the new anti-Semitism. But what you're hearing from Omar is classic anti-Semitism, and the way to deal with that is classically point the finger at somebody else, and that's all this is about. Democrats have to deal with this, and there is, I'm not, as head of the Republican Jewish Coalition, I'm not the one to counsel Democrats on how to solve their rifts. But clearly, there are Democrats, this is Israel, and support of Israel has been a bipartisan issue. That's changed. That's changed. The far-left Democrat base is moving the Democrat Party away from support of Israel and tolerating this kind of classic anti-Semitism, which really breaks my heart.
Yeah, and Zuhdi, quickly, what do you make of the fact that we're told the resolution is being broadened to include anti-Islamophobia as part of the language?
It's offensive to me that there's a moral equivalency between what the Jewish community has been through post-Holocaust and up to Pittsburgh recently, and to compare that to the, yes, there's some palpable Muslim, anti-Muslim bigotry, but there's no way to compare it. And in many ways, you water it down. We were told the same with the Black Lives Matter movement, and now we're told if we said all lives matter, that's insulting. And yet, when it's clearly there's no moral equivalency between anti-Semitism and what's been happening post 9/11 to Muslim communities, it's offensive, and we should not insult Muslims by saying that there's some equality there, and it's a very different narrative.
Zuhdi Jasser, thank you very much. And Senator Coleman, great to see you looking so good. Great to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you both.